excited to have a few members of BSAA here today, the Black Student Athlete Alliance at UCLA, to have a critical conversation and just give a lot of insights on what it's like being a Black student athlete at UCLA. So welcome to week 2's BSBA presentation. Of course, we couldn't start out this presentation. As you see, we already have a theme going on with our background in these slides. Shout out to the Lakers who won the championship in such a crazy year. Shout out to Jeannie Buss and the whole Lakers organization. Shout out to all the fans of LA who have a tough year. Honestly, it's been a tough year, especially in LA. And then definitely shout out to Gigi and Kobe Bryant. I think this made this championship for the Lakers organization very special. And I'm from the Bay, so I'm always a Warriors fan, but I think being in LA the past couple of years, I'm super ecstatic. If it wasn't the Warriors, I'm super ecstatic for LA to do it, especially this year out of all years. And before actually I have the panelists introduce themselves, I wanted to give you guys a little bit of context of BSAA. They actually put out this video in partnership with UCLA Athletics this past summer. And it kind of went viral actually. It is a Black Lives Matter video that was put out. So maybe you've seen it. It was on UCLA Athletics, maybe not. So we're gonna show that here today. You'll notice some of our panelists are in it. We have some of our e-board members are also in it. And then we also have this picture right here actually is Isaiah Holmes. He was a BSBA alumni. So he was the vice president actually last year. So some of you guys may recognize his face as well. And you may or may not see me in it as well. So hopefully this, let's go back real quick. Hopefully this plays. And if you have any audio issues, let me know.
Across the U.S., Black Americans are incarcerated at 5 times the rate of white Americans. This is a problem. At UCLA, less than 6% of the student body is African American.
As athletes, it is only right that we use our platform to amplify the voices of others. Student athletes are not exempt from injustice in this country. We can take off our uniform, but none of us can take off our skin color.
One of my teammates and or I could have been George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor.
You support us on the court, field, track, or in the pool, but do you care about us and our communities outside of the athletic arenas? It would be a disgrace to Jackie Robinson, Rayford Johnson, Arthur Ashe, and other notable Black Bruins if we didn't acknowledge the current student athletes.
Christina Chennault,
Jay Grunwald,
Kevin Copeland,
Jada Hart, Kyra Johnson,
Isaiah Holmes,
Kennedy Faulkner.
Because that could have been us. It is not enough to just want change, but we have to make it happen. If you're going to support me on the field, support me off the field.
We can start by educating ourselves and those around us. They might be hard conversations, but they are needed. We will not ignore the racial injustices in this country, nor will we be silent about them.
Because silence is violence. We need to speak up and let our voices be heard through protests, petitions, and voting.
Commit to being vulnerable and building relationships with athletes of different races. Start engaging and speaking publicly on the principles of race equity.
Yeah, so that's the video. It's pretty powerful. I know personally I was really inspired to be a part of that project and to help out like BSAA put that all together. So any thoughts or initial feedback, comments from that video, throw it in the chat if that was cool. Or if you hadn't seen that before, definitely appreciate any encouragement in the chat as well. So now we're gonna have the panelists introduce themselves. And Yeah, so we'll go through. We have 3 panelists once again representing BSAA and themselves. So we'll have them speak on their hometown, what year they are, what sport they're also currently in, their major. Obviously, we got their Instagram, so we're gonna throw those in the chat as well. Give them a follow. And the last question I want them to answer, that's not actually on here right now, is what their plans are post grad, whether they want to play professionally or what type of career they want to go into as well, since they're actually all 4th years. So we'll start off with you, Michaela, if you can unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group.
Hi everyone, my name is Michaela Onyenwede. I'm actually from Aurora, Colorado. I'm a 4th year sociology major with a minor in African American Studies. This is my Instagram, but later on after college, I do want to pursue the professional life. It's been something that I wanted to do for a little bit of college, and it's kind of cool that it's so tangible next year. So yeah, definitely professional life, but I'm also interested in going to dental school too as well.
See that good smile right here? She can do it. Thank you, Michaela. Then we'll start with James, JR, either or. But James, we'll have you unmute yourself, introduce yourself to the group.
Awesome. Hey, how's everybody doing? I'm James North, the 4th. I'm from Lancaster, California. I'm a 4th year. I'm a sociology major with a minor in African American Studies. And after I graduate, my plan right now is to go on and continue through grad school, hopefully being able to stay at UCLA and go inside of the sociology program or the new education major that was just added in.
I definitely, you already know I advocate for that grad program because I'm in it, so I'm biased. But thank you. Okay, perfect. And then we'll head over to Jamia. Can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself to the group?
Hi everyone, my name is Jamia Bent. I am from Los Angeles, California. This will be my 4th year. I'm on the women's water polo team and I am majoring in sociology. My plans after graduating would be to start up my own daycare in South Central Los Angeles. So look out for it, girl.
I didn't know that. That's super cool though. That's super exciting. Okay, well, thank you guys all for introducing yourselves, and thank you once again for making the time to speak with all the members of BSBA. I know they're all really grateful too to hear your perspective and eager to hear your perspective as well. So we have students once again from all different types of majors. I guess a little context about BSBA. You know, since we don't have specific majors catered to sports, that's part of the mission of why we created the Sports Business Association. That's why a lot of people in this club are joining. But everyone has some sort of passion and interest in the sports world. So it's really beneficial to hear your guys' perspective and be in these meetings as well. So my first question is actually for Michaela. So as one of the current co-presidents of BSAA, I would just like you to give a little context of what BSA is and why it's important, since, you know, we've never had it at UCLA before. It's a brand new organization that was started. So would love to hear your explanation on that.
Yeah, of course. Like Christina said, I'm one of the acting co-presidents of BSAA at the moment. And BSAA is the Black Student Athlete Alliance at UCLA. And it was really formed in order to create a safe space for Black athletes to have some sort of space for one another. This hasn't been done at all, like Christina said, at UCLA, especially during this time, the political climate. We just felt like it was super necessary to be able to have these conversations about experiences that only Black people go through. And especially as Black athletes, we have such a platform, especially going to such a great school like UCLA. We have such a platform to use, and people listen to athletes. And so we felt coming together is going to help us, it was going to help the community, and it was going to help bring awareness to the racial and social injustices in this country. And right now that's like super important, especially being Black athletes. And a lot of people see us as athletes, but at the end of the day, we're Black first. And I think that was very important for us to kind of convey when creating this group.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I mean, it was something that's just never been created before. And obviously, after a lot of the racial tensions throughout this year, especially, it just felt like now was really like an important imperative time to really start it. Yeah. So then also, this is a question for all the panelists. And once again, for all the members that are on or listening right now, feel free to add questions in the chat as we go through. And then we'll also have time at the end to unmute yourself and you can ask any follow-up questions on any of their answers. So feel free once again, just a reminder to ask some questions. But this is now a question catered to actually all three of you guys. I would like you guys to all just briefly tell us about your relationship with sport growing up, and how you guys got here to UCLA through the avenue of athletics as well. And we can start with Jamia.
Okay, well, my relationship with sport growing up has to be just for me as just being active. I love to be active, and it was also an outlet for me to just get away from home and interact with other active people as well. And how I ended up at UCLA was I played water polo in high school for all 4 years, and I always knew I wanted to go to UCLA. That was like my dream school. So it's a pretty great story actually, but I'll just try to say it short. But basically, I attended a water polo clinic at UCLA that the team was holding, and they were just so impressed with the way I was performing that I was able to talk with the coach and tell them that, like, I want to play at UCLA, like, this is the school I want to be, this is the level I want to achieve. And I got into UCLA and I started playing ever since.
And then James, do you want to tell us next?
Similar to Jamia, I've used sport growing up kind of as a space where I wouldn't really have to focus on anything going on, either at home or honestly in school. It was a space where I was really able to just be myself and just, not focus, honestly. How I ended up at UCLA overall was I went to a tryout for the boys youth national team for volleyball, and the assistant head coach here, Brad Keller, saw me my junior year and pretty much extended out an invitation. And I was one of the last people in my class to sign, so it worked out.
For me, so I actually started playing basketball rather late for basketball. Usually people start when they're like 5 or 6. I started very late. I started when I was like 12. And I kind of started because I switched schools. I went to a private school, didn't really have sports, switched to a public school, and then that's kind of when basketball started for me. And through high school, I played, I mean, it was just for fun for me, but I really realized that I could play at the next level, probably when I was like a junior in high school. During that time, that's kind of when you get recruited for the NCAA. And so I was able to go on 5 different visits. And just when I came to UCLA, it just felt like that's where I needed to be. And it kind of felt like home, as cliche as that sounds. And so I'm still here, obviously. And so I know I made the right decision. And I just have loved my experience at UCLA up to this point.
Yeah, no, it's interesting because like all of us, or a lot of people on this call are UCLA students. So it just goes to show everyone has like a unique journey to get to UCLA, but here we all are. Okay, so the next question, this is once again for all of you guys, since you guys are all in different respective sports. So describe your experience of being a Black athlete in your sport. A quick context once again, Michaela's a women's basketball player. Basketball is a little bit more of a predominantly Black sport in comparison to James and Jamia on water polo and volleyball that are actually predominantly Black or predominantly white sports. So that actually does create a different dynamic when you are competing on that team. So I would like all of you guys to just describe your experience being a Black athlete in your sport. And that doesn't have to be specifically at UCLA, but just like as you've been in that sport for your time. And any of you guys can take this one first.
Yeah, I'll start. So like Christina said, basketball is a predominantly Black sport. So I don't think that my experience was hindered at all, just because I saw people that looked like me in the sport and we connected in that way. I think it's a little bit different in women's basketball as far as like the discrimination comes, or the critics come from being a woman more so in the sport, because there is men's and women's basketball. And so there is this kind of stigma that basketball athletes that are women are not as good, or they shouldn't play sports, or they should be in the kitchen. And so we get those kind of comments more so than racial comments, but those are obviously not great too. But I would say my experience as a Black athlete has been fine, but as a female athlete, that intersection has definitely been a little tough just with the critics and everything.
And also actually a quick context to that. So I know I was talking to you about this a little bit, Michaela, about the difference between even like the NBA and the WNBA. And for people that don't know, the WNBA just moved their minimum contract to $250,000, which is pretty significant to what it was, but it's still a huge, obviously, disparity. You know, the NBA minimum contract is closer to $900,000. So it just shows a grave difference to what Michaela is saying is being a woman versus being a male in her sport is totally different. And then we can go to Jamia. Yeah.
So my experience is obviously different from Michaela's. Water polo is a white dominant sport, and for me, my experience is actually pretty challenging. I'm pretty much, well, me and another another goalie on the team are pretty much the only Black people on the team. And so in my experience, I've had to overcome just a mental battle mostly of thinking that I don't belong in the sport because there's not a lot of Black people, or like, would I even really need to play the sport, or going over different stereotypes of like, oh, you're Black, why choose water polo, you know, stuff like that. Or, you know, the stereotype of like, oh, you're not afraid to get your hair wet, or stuff like that, you know. And so it's just overcoming those challenges of like belonging and trying to like not let those stereotypes define me, and let my journey, my unique journey, define my love for water polo. And yeah, that's my experience.
Similar to Jamia's experience in water polo, I am one of the few Black athletes in volleyball, honestly, in general. There are about 9 of us in total in the MPSF, Big West, and even the, I want to say the NLIV on the East Coast. Being Black is almost kind of, it feels as though you're constantly a spectacle and always being put on a platform. No matter what you do, you're always going to be judged. And if you don't fit the stereotype of sagging and tattoos and cussing people out, then you're perceived as being whitewashed, and they don't actually view you as Black. So you get called an exception, or you hear a lot of, you hear a lot of backhanded compliments from either coaches or other players, even other parents. A lot of people do doubt your actual skills in volleyball. People often tell you that you're just athletic, or you are only here because the coach wants to fill or meet a quota.
Yeah, and actually a follow-up to that, James, are people surprised when you say, oh, I'm on the volleyball team? Because, well, first question, do people assume you're an athlete when you're on campus? I feel like that's a common thing for Black students on campus in general. And if so, though, are they surprised if you tell them you're on men's volleyball?
People actually never guess that I play men's volleyball, and it shocks them each and every time. They always ask if I play either football, basketball, or run track. And after those 3 guesses are wrong, they automatically assume that I just must not play a sport whatsoever.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the panelists probably resonate with the assumption of being an athlete, just being on campus. And I know a lot of other Black students that aren't athletes get that assumption as well. So yeah, definitely if you see a Black student on campus, don't ask them if they're an athlete. Yeah. So going on also, so based on those nuances in all of your guys' sport, how accepting have conversations been with teammates and coaches about race in your sport? And we can go in that same order, Michaela, Jamia, then James, but especially with everything that's been happening as of late and throughout the summer, how has your program either accepted that, or is it still kind of uncomfortable to talk about race in your athletic program?
Yeah, so my experience is probably a little bit different than that of Jamia and James, but my my head coach is white, but she has just been so proactive in these conversations, which has been really cool. Every single time there's something that goes on, unfortunately, she does speak up. We do have conversations about it. She actively is wanting to be anti-racist, and she's actively wanting to learn our experiences. And I just am so grateful to be able to have a coach that does care about us as more than people. And I think once you get to this level, sometimes that can be hard to find people who see you as just more than just an athlete. And so I'm just so grateful for her to have those conversations, to want to learn, want to get better, want to unlearn implicit biases that she has. And so it's been great, the conversations that we've been having with my teammates, coaches, and they just respect where we're coming from, and they really, really want to learn. And I think it's just been, a really cool experience to see that during this time.
And actually, Michaela, to add on to that, because I agree. I mean, I've seen even from the outside how much Corey, if you guys don't know, you guys should look her up. She's an amazing coach, but I feel like also just amazing exemplar of inclusive coaching too. But can you speak on also the More Than a Dream initiative too that women's basketball is kind of helping lead?
Yeah, of course. So obviously with the things that were going on, the 6 Black players on the team decided that we wanted to speak up and not stay silent. And so we actually went to our coaches about an initiative that we had. And we went back and forth about what we wanted to call it, but we ended up actually landing on More Than a Dream. And it is a play on the idea of Martin Luther King's dream speech. And so through More Than a Dream, it's kind of a way to educate people. DREAM is actually an acronym. So it means diversify, reveal, educate, advocate, and motivate. And so we're using those pillars to be able to use our voices as athletes again to just let people know about our experiences as Black people first before athlete. And it's just been, again, really cool to be a part of a program that lets us have that voice. And we run part of the social media. We're doing a lot with community service. We have actually implemented things where it's like, we're gonna help one more Black-owned restaurant. Like we had a Black-owned restaurant for our food after practice. Like those sort of things that we're implementing, it's really, really cool to see just a program that's kind of behind us and is letting us have a voice during this time. So yeah, it's been a really cool initiative. I'm excited to see where it goes with too.
Definitely. Yeah, that's definitely a very progressive program, like not like very, very rare in comparison to any other program, not just I think at UCLA, but in general across the nation. So it's cool that we actually have that here at UCLA. So definitely keep an eye out on women's basketball, follow their socials as well. But Jamia, can you speak to this question in your different experience as well?
Yes, definitely. I believe now my teammates and coaches are accepting to having conversations about race. I want to say until recently with the George Floyd killing and Breonna Taylor and everything that's been going on throughout the summer, they're more accepting and willing to learn. I definitely had to like bring it up and initiate the conversation, but it definitely allowed me to see their perspective and how they want to approach things, how to word certain things, how to even bring it up in the first place without it not offending anyone or degrading anyone's opinion or things of that such. So we've had just a couple conversations about it, but and we had a space as well to just say how we feel about the current climate. So
yeah, no, that's definitely important, and I think it's good that your program has opened that up too as well throughout this time. And then James, you want to speak on this one as well?
Yes, indeed. The volleyball team prior to the incidents over coronavirus were not actually open or accepting any of these conversations. A lot of people did not want different races on the team. It was actually very, very divided. But after everything that's happened during the COVID pandemic, the team has honestly been coming together a lot more and having these difficult conversations. And we've just been trying to understand each other's different perspectives.
No,
we're stepping in the right direction.
That's really important, at least, too. I think it's made a lot of programs at least have to think about having these conversations more and figuring out how. I think sometimes it definitely is awkward, especially if it isn't, you know, predominantly Black or doesn't really have that much diversity, it can be like awkward conversation, and kind of even feel like, you know, sometimes like when I know personally I went to a predominantly white high school, and you know when you're in like history class and they're talking about race, it gets kind of awkward or silent. But I think it's important to have these conversations, especially in the sports world too, that is so diverse with their athletes especially. So this is also a question for all of you guys. So in light of COVID-19, in light of the loss of you guys' season, so if people don't know, women's basketball, women's water polo, and men's volleyball all compete partially, at least in spring, and spring got cut short due to COVID, right? So all of their seasons either got cut short or wasn't even really able to start. So with the loss of your seasons, with the COVID-19 and all the racial justices coming to light, how have you guys mentally navigated this season of life? And we can start back at you, Michaela.
Yeah, so like Christina said, the day that we found out that our season got canceled, that was probably one of the more sad days of the year. It was really sad just because, especially because of our seniors. That was it. Like, we didn't know our last game was going to be our last game. And thankfully, we were able to have at least 30-ish games. So we were able to finish the season. And so I was really feeling for the spring sports like James and Jamia and everybody else. But yeah, it was tough. We went home in March, and it was tough, especially with the things that were going on in the world. And I had to bask in my emotions for like the first time and kind of just like face what was going on. And that was tough for me to be at home and obviously to be sad about our season and to see everything that was going on. But after like getting through the whole emotional part and stuff, I was able to just like have time with myself. Like, we don't get that time as athletes to be able to be at home for 6 months. And so I was just able to kind of spend time with my family, do things that I wasn't able to do during the season, get closer to God and really bask in my faith. And so, yeah, I mean, there were some obviously unfortunate parts of the pandemic and the racial injustice things that were going on and our loss of our season, but there were some good things that came out of it for sure.
Yeah, and I think that's also something important to note that you just brought up is a lot of athletes didn't have that time to pause. And I know this caused a pause for everybody, but I think especially with seasons kind of getting stripped and some of our athletic identity getting stripped as athletes, you do start to figure out, oh, well, what else am I really interested in? And that's reflection time that a lot of college athletes especially don't have time for, just because their schedules are so packed with their sport and their seasons. So that's a really good point. How about you, Jamia?
Well, definitely everything that Michaela said was pretty much similar to me. At the beginning, though, of when they just canceled all the seasons, I was pretty in denial. I didn't want to believe it, to be honest. I was just like, no, there's no way. Like, we're going to come back. Like, this is all going to be over. Like, this is nothing, you know? So when I went home, I continue on my routine. I woke up early. I did my training, dryland training. I still kept training every single day. And I was like, just hoping that it would, you know, soon end, but obviously it didn't. So once I realized that, you know, it was completely over with the season and we were just going through racial injustices, it all hit me like at once. And I remember I was like, I was completely devastated. I was disappointed. I was very sad, just about everything that was going on. And it just seemed like nothing was like really going right at all. Like, things were just going downhill. But then, like Michaela, I realized that there's a lot of things that I could focus on within myself. So the things that I want to do after graduating, which is how I came up with wanting to do my own daycare, because I realized that I love kids a lot. They bring me a lot of joy. And I got to spend so much time with my family because I've played for several years and just never had a time off throughout the entire year. I was just always playing. So that was definitely a switch for me, just being with my family, being with friends, traveling a lot more, and getting in touch with what I want to do after school.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's amazing. How about you, James?
Michaela and Jamia pretty much hit the nail right on the head. The beginning of the COVID outbreak really stripped away the athletic identity that we kind of resonate with, or that we have resonated with for the majority of our lives. So it was the first time that we were able to actually take a step back and find out what other interests we have, or even what we wanted to do outside of sports, which was a real positive thing that did come out of this. With all of the racial injustices that did occur over the COVID outbreak, it was different for me in the sense that it was the first time my teammates and I had these difficult conversations, or it was the first chance that they would actually sit down and listen without judging or without trying to make jokes out of it. So that was a big shift for me, honestly.
Yeah, no, definitely. You guys all have very positive outlooks, and I feel like that's something that's really valuable. I mean, I know it's something, whether you're a college athlete, you played sports before, or even I feel like anyone that gets to a school like UCLA, you kind of have to have that growth mindset. And you guys definitely are all, exemplifying that, because I think for anyone in 2020, especially with all these things, there's been a lot of stuff that's been out of our control. So for you guys to be able to see a silver lining and all of that, to see the progress and all of that as well, with throughout the struggle too, is really commendable. So now going into the next question, this one is specific actually to Jamia. I wanted to hear what changes would you like to see at UCLA to make it a more inclusive environment? I know it's been a lot of conversations BSAA has had is what should the next steps be for within athletics, within the school as a whole? Should there be educational seminars? What do you think, what changes would you like to see within the UCLA environment to just make it more inclusive for Black students, Black athletes, and everyone?
I think for me, to make UCLA more inclusive, I'd definitely like to see just more conversations happening about it doesn't even have to be about race, but just becoming closer, to be honest. I know there's certain times where I go to events and I see different groups here, different groups there, different people there, but I feel like we should have more of an event where it's we talk to each other, we talk about what interests us, we talk about the things that we have similar in, we have differences in. That way we feel more inclusive within the environment, and we don't have to shy away from having those really tough conversations. I think that's what I want to see. And also another thing I want to see is kind of just more of a willingness to be educated, and especially with coaches and professors and things in that such, because I've heard a lot of stories where coaches are not accepting to talk about race, and they just don't provide an open space for their teammates. And I just hear a lot of things about that. And so I feel like there has to be some sort of mandated educational piece that could be presented to them, or that they should talk about, so that we're all just hearing each other out and getting different perspectives about the racial injustices that are going on. So.
No, definitely. And I think, like you said, creating those spaces, even the space we have here today, it's never been done before, having this two mergers of these sort of clubs, I guess, together, bridging students, bridging college athletes together. It's definitely a unique space. So that's definitely something to be proud of, to be a part of as well. And then also, last question before we're going to open it up to questions. This one specifically for you, James. How do you see the Black Student Athlete Alliance evolving for future generations? Or how would you like it to evolve?
Okay. For future generations, I see the Black Student Athlete Alliance kind of being even more of a safe haven for Black athletes as they come through UCLA. Knowing that there's a space on campus for them just to kind of let their hair down and freely be themselves without any judgment it honestly brings a smile to my face, because it's something that I wish I would have had going through my first 3 years here. And just to even be able to be a part of it going into my 4th year has truly been amazing and helpful for me, even in the short amount of time that it's been offered.
Definitely. And I think just going off of that, I mean, relating to the video in the beginning, if you guys didn't catch the stat, at UCLA, the demographic is less than 6% are Black students. So it's definitely like very somewhat of an ostracizing environment from time to time, just to really like stand out, assume, you know, all Black students are athletes. So having that safe space is actually very unique. Having this organization like BSAA is very unique. And if you haven't noticed, I mean, for people who are freshmen, maybe you don't know the layout of the campus, but it's important to note that a lot of the athletic buildings, like football, basketball, and then a lot of other sports, are all kind of, the facilities are separated. So even within the Black sports, or where a lot of the Black athletes reside, those facilities are separated. So it's like, for example, I can't get into the football facility. I can't get into Michaela's basketball, Mo Austin facility. So even that setup alone separates a lot of Black athletes too. So it definitely is a unique space. So now, that was amazing. Thank you guys. Thank you, panelists. We're going to open it up to questions. I'm going to stop sharing screen. We can look at the chat, and also just feel free to jump in and unmute yourselves if you have any questions for specific panelists as well. And so we can head out to that one now. Let me look in the chat for now, but if you guys have questions before I read them out, feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. All right, then I'm just gonna read them. Okay, from Nico. Have you ever had instances when traveling where you felt treated differently because you were Black athletes? So this is, once again, I guess, for any panelist. And have you guys felt different, or have you guys had any instances traveling where you felt differently, where there's different locations, different things like that? This is open, once again, to anyone.
I have, most definitely. My 2nd year, we were traveling out to go play GCU, and as we're all walking towards the bus, I ended up kind of straggling towards the back, and a family walking by, even though we were all dressed the same and all had on the same attire. They asked if I was a part of the basketball team coming on, even though we had like a huge bus that said UCLA volleyball on the side. All of my other friends were there, and they were assumed to do volleyball, but I was assumed just to play basketball.
Everyone's facial reactions.
I think for me, I don't really remember specific instances, but I do, when traveling, I do hear some of the parents from the team or from other teams ask me like, so like, why water polo? Like, why did you choose water polo? Like I shouldn't be able to play, or something like in that sense, you know what I mean? And so I would get those questions, and then traveling, I wouldn't not travel because I'm a Black athlete, but I would not play certain games. And I don't want to say that it's because I'm Black, but sometimes it could feel that way because I'm pretty much one out of two of the Black people that are on the team. So yeah.
For me, I guess when we would travel in the airport and stuff, we just get the questions like, oh, you guys must be basketball players. And I mean, we're like 6-footers, so it's assumed, but then we're also black women. So we get the, you guys must be basketball players and blah, blah, blah. There was this one instance, we actually, it's not so much athletic related, but we actually went to the FBI headquarters as a team because we were playing in Virginia or something. And we had a experience where one of the people who was showing us around, he said a comment like, hey, like, you light one and you dark one, get over there. And it was really weird. And it was weird for sure. Like, it definitely rocked our team because it was the first time, well, not maybe the first time, but yeah, I guess the first time in that instance that we had been separated like that. And like our race, and not even like deeper than that, like our color was separated. And so like, that was really, really weird. And it was weird coming from a man who worked at the FBI. And so it definitely rocked our team, and we had to have a conversation about it when we got back to campus. And it was just, a very emotional conversation because it just went deeper into like the deeply rooted stuff of racism, and that's even deeper into colorism. And so yeah, that was probably one experience from last year that definitely rocked our team as far as just like being Black women.
That's actually pretty wild. And I think that's why it's so important to or so important to bring you guys in even today, because everyone here, I think in some way might want to get into the sports industry. So it's just important because you guys are getting access to like these perspectives that some other people in sports don't have, right? So it's just important to be able to like know these nuances, different things that like aren't really acceptable to say, especially if you're going to be working with like diverse just people in general. So it's really good that you guys are like, everyone's getting this to hear all of this. So moving on to the next question from Johnny, do you guys feel like UCLA Athletics has done enough to support the Black athletes? Yes or no, and why? This is once again for any of the panelists.
I say no, personally, because I remember the one and only conversation we ever had about race with Jen Fry. And even then, that was really, really awkward. You could just tell, like, it was with the athletic student body, but it was super, super awkward. Like, people didn't want to say much, and you could just tell there was a little bit of tension, but that was the only one, and I've been here for 4 years, that we talked about race. And so I think with Martin, he's definitely making a push for people to have to speak up and have these conversations. So that's a push in the right direction, but I wouldn't say before that there really wasn't that much support for Black athletes.
Yeah, I agree with Michaela, and I feel like once we have more conversations and more support from UCLA athletics about having those conversations and having those spaces to really talk about race or racial injustice, then I feel like the teams would be more willing, or at least will be more willing to basically have those, be more supported and have those conversations within their teams, and it would just bring together like inclusivity. So.
Yeah. And another question actually for all of you guys. So Nico and Tom bring up a good point, actually a similar point. They're kind of asking about, have you guys as Black athletes ever felt like degraded just to your athletic capabilities, over your academic achievements as well? Do you feel like you've ever gotten like treated differently by professors, students, anything like that, by just stepping in and being a Black athlete?
I think for me, definitely. I remember this one instance my sophomore year, and a lot of the athletes sit in the back, which we probably shouldn't, but whatever. And so I was around football players and whatever. We were all like mostly paying attention. And she had said a comment like, you all are always back there doing this, and you guys are this and this and that. And I was like, she completely called us out in the middle of the course. And it really wasn't like people were being super disrespectful. It was kind of like here and there. And it was just weird because she put us in a spotlight, like we weren't doing anything. And obviously there's only Black athletes that were sitting there. And so it was really, really weird for me. And I kind of rubbed me the wrong way because I feel like if it was somebody else or another group, she wouldn't have done that. And there's other people who are athletes in the class who were talking, and, some people are just disruptive in that way. And she didn't say anything to them, but it was us who she called out in front of everybody. So that's one like instance that I would say, but mostly my experiences have been pretty positive with professors, as long as like I was doing my stuff, for sure.
Yeah, and I feel like it's very important to note too, it's always usually negative to make generalizations towards any like group of people. So like the term you all, like, I don't think you should say it. And even no matter what you're talking about, no matter who you're talking about, it's usually something like negative following that, or like a stereotype. So that's just a disclaimer. I don't know if James or Jamia want to speak to that same point as well.
My interactions with professors have ended up pretty positive. However, my interactions with other students have not been. People often, when they see Black students at UCLA, the first thing they assume is that they do play athletics. And then if they are in athletics, it's all that they assume we know. They don't ever actually want to get to know the person. So for instance, I love art history. I was captain of the Spanish dance club back in high school, and I even started Quidditch club. but that is never brought up in conversations with other athletes in general, or even other students around UCLA. And it is a little bothersome.
Yeah, definitely. And then also, final question too, before I kind of go into last slide for what's happening next week. But this was a question specifically to James and Jamia. But as Black athletes in predominantly white sports, do you guys feel added pressure to be a role model or to be a perfect, exemplar in your sports?
Okay, I'll go. I definitely feel added pressure, but not to be perfect, but to be on my A game and like make sure that I don't mess up, because I don't want to be the Black person, like the quote unquote, oh, like it's always the Black people type thing. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to be that person to be that way. And so like there's pressure to, if I mess up, then, or if I don't communicate well, or if I don't keep my grades up, or if I don't take tutoring sessions, then like I won't, I'll be looked upon as like, how do I explain that? Like I'll just won't be like the person to be the role model, or to be a leader, I suppose.
And James, that makes sense. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, definitely. Going off of what Jamia said, being the only Black person in predominantly white sport I've definitely felt added pressure. It's almost as though, as I stated earlier, being on a constant pedestal and being constantly judged, whether that be by your teammates, by your coaches, or even other people who come to watch the games. For me, I know that anytime I step on the court and go out and play, I'm not just representing myself, I'm also representing any and every Black volleyball player who wants to ever play collegiately. And it does get to me sometimes because, if you mess up, or if you don't speak properly, or if you don't carry yourself in a certain way, that they'll probably never pick up another Black athlete. So it is almost as though we're trying to pave the way for more to be able to come through.
Definitely. And I even know Jada, one of our EWAR members, being on the tennis team, that's a predominantly white sport too. I know UCLA had a historic moment too, where they had the most amount of Black athletes on their team, or in history, really, in tennis history, if I'm saying all that right. And there was 4 of you guys too. So definitely a totally different experience and nuance too, as well. But UCLA also, fun fact, has that rich history of Black athletes too. Jackie Robinson, Jackie Joyner-Kersee, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all these like trailblazers too. So like they kind of said, there's definitely maybe some added pressure sometimes, I think, just being an athlete in general at UCLA, but having that complexity and that layer of also being a Black athlete. And what does that actually mean? And what weight does that hold? And what precedent does that set to your community? And how much harder you have to work to stay in your classes and to also, shoot extra for Michaela on the court, and having all that extra time to excel in everything as well. So I really appreciate, once again, you guys all being here and being able to speak about BSAA to BSBA, BSBA. And I hope everyone learned a lot from this experience as well. Once again, this is like never happened before. So you guys are getting some really good insights. And I'm sure if you guys have any follow-up questions, either feel free to email BSBA@BruinsSBA, or if you follow them, maybe informally, you can DM them. I don't know. I'm not going to solicit that, but that can be something casual too. So one last thing I'm going to share with you guys before we wrap up. I think this timing was perfect. So I'm going to reshare screen really quickly. And just talking about what's happening next week as well for BISBA. Next week, so Thursday at this exact same time, so October 22nd at 6 p.m., we're hosting another guest speaker, Stephanie Strack. Also the panelists, you guys are free to come as well. This is pretty cool. So Stephanie Strack is current founder and CEO of Voice in Sport. It's a foundation working to shine a brighter light on female athletes and that experience as well. She also currently does some consulting, professional speaking, and mentorship. And fun fact, before she came to Voice in Sport, she was a former Nike executive for around 15 years. So she definitely has an amazing resume, amazing experience. We're super appreciative and grateful and privileged to be able to have a speaker like that next week. So last shout out again at the very end, you see reminder of our attendance policy and point system. So if you didn't get credit for coming today, or if you don't know about our attendance policy, just fill out, or we put back in the chat, fill out the attendance form. We basically collect points and we do some giveaways and different exciting things. So just to give you some credit for attending this amazing discussion as well. And once again, super grateful to have all the speakers today for BSAA. That's all we have for today. So thank you. Follow our socials to stay up to date. Shout out to the eBoard executive team right now that has put together all of our new platforms, like our new GroupMe. I know it was popping last week during the Lakers game. So we talk about all these different things. Don't only just follow BISBA, on all of our socials if you're not, but definitely follow BSAA as well on their socials. And you can see them on Instagram at UCLA BSAA. And of course, follow our panelists and stay up to date. So now that you have a little bit more of an insight on their experience, other than, people who might see them on campus, or people that might see their games and competitions, or just their Instagram alone, you have a deeper insight on all of these people and who they are behind just being an athlete. So definitely stay up to date on all these socials, and stay up to date on all of our panelists as well. Thank you all again for all the panelists for speaking, Michaela, Jamia, and James, for taking the time out of your busy schedules with Zoom University and being here. So that's all we have for today. Can't wait to see you guys next week as well. And hope everyone has a great rest of your night.
Thank you, guys.
Night, you guys. Thanks for coming.